what is exception handling, right? And what is exception handling and the keywords. And then we start with some examples, like where we can use it. So we did try catch finally and some throws keyword we saw. So let's go to the end. So we did training and this is what we saw. How to use throws keyword. So I have mentioned that it will be used with method signature right here and other three keywords that will be used within the method. Okay, so here we have done. Next we saw, mm, I mean today we will see what is the last keyword, that is throw keyword. Okay, so throw keyword is used to throw, used for throwing the exception explicitly. Okay guys, so far you guys have noticed that whatever exception were coming, they were coming by default. We were not doing anything, it just came because we are doing something wrong. But there could be scenarios that we want to throw exceptions, explicitly in our code. We will write that code which says throw this exception. So that's kind of a manual step we are going to do by using throw keyword. So we are doing this manually. We will write that code which will throw exception. So why? There can be a scenarios that think about any project. Let's suppose we are going to work on any some online cart or online payment service, and in any case maybe the payment gets failed. So we need to tell the user that something has been gone wrong. So how we can do that? We can create some custom exceptions. Okay, so now I'm talking about custom exceptions. So in custom exceptions, we define our own exception classes. Definitely, Java provides lots of exceptions to do this scenarios, to handle multiple scenarios there. But when it comes to this online system, so Java is not aware what is online uh, card or online payment service. It just knows it stuffs arithmetic exception, null pointer exceptions, other exceptions, file not found. So we need to handle this kind of scenarios when payment is getting failed. So we can create our own exception like payment failed exceptions. Okay. So see what I did, how I named it, payment failed, and then I have suffix with exception. Maybe user is trying to log in and by intentionally or intentionally that credentials are wrong. So we can say the user is not able to log in. So we can say login exceptions. So you can see I'm just giving some scenarios and accordingly we can create or generate some exceptions. And definitely Java would not throw this exception because we are creating it. And if we are creating our own exception, so we have to throw them explicitly based on some conditions. So first of all, we will learn how to create our own exceptions, the custom exceptions, then how to throw them. Okay, so that's where throw keyword is used. Because when we say throwing exception explicitly, mostly we create our own exceptions and then based on some conditions, wherever that condition is failing, we can throw our exceptions and accordingly we'll handle them. Okay, so when we say custom exceptions, how to create them? Let's have some steps for them. Well, it's that simple, not that tough. So first step is create a Java class, then extend mm, runtime exception. That's from the class present in Java language. Okay. Then third, override or create constructors, right? So this constructor could be mostly we tend to create two constructors. First one we default, right, without any argument, and second you can create argumented one. So typically we create one argument, but again it's not hard and fast that you have to create only one argument. Depends upon the account, we can create multiple types of arguments. So most of the time we create default and work our constructor. Okay, so these are steps we are going to do to create custom exception. So you can see it's not that tough. Creating class not an issue. Extending any class again quite simple. And when it comes to uh, creating constructor, that we know constructor and really simple implementation is going to be there. Okay, so let's create that then. Exception demo. Right click. Let's say I'm going to create payment field exceptions. Okay, so payment field capital F. Okay, done. So payment field exceptions here. Then main method, and then oh sorry, not main method. Okay, so class is done. Then second step says extends runtime exceptions. Okay, so I'll say extends runtime exception. This is also done. Third step says override or create constructors. So one default and one argument constructor. Okay, so let's create public default one. I'm going to create copy class name, then done. Okay, simple. Then I'll create argument one, and this time I'll take string message. Okay, and here I will explicitly call super function or method and pass this message there, and done. That's it. We have a custom exception ready. Any question on this? I don't think any concept is new for you guys. Creating class, not an issue. Extending and then creating constructors. If we do this,
So,
yeah,
so runtime exception is not another class or any other method. Why do we need to extend it?
it's a Java class. And if you are creating on custom exception, at least somehow we need to connect it with Java.
Okay,
But
so runtime exceptions is a Java class. So that's a default Java class.
yes, it is.
Okay, got
Okay,
it.
so let me show you its documentation so we can confirm runtime exception. So we already know how to do that, right? Runtime exception Java doc. So it will gives you Oracle site. So you can refer public class runtime exception extends exception class. Remember this exception class, the parent class, that hierarchy we saw yesterday. And then
Yes.
runtime exception is the superclass of those exceptions that can be thrown during the normal operation of the Java virtual machine. Okay, and runtime exception and its subclass are unchecked exception. That's why yesterday I gave check out what are checked and unchecked exceptions. So if you are creating any child of runtime exception, that means we are by default creating an unchecked exception. Now, what does it mean when you are creating any unchecked exception? Unchecked exception do not need to be declared in a method or constructor throws clause. If they can be thrown by the exception, the method will propagate outside the okay, leave that. It doesn't make any sense. So when you are creating unchecked exception, we are actually creating one exception which does not need to be thrown explicitly by using a throws keyword. Let me put this here somewhere. public class. This is a signature of runtime exception class, and this is superclass of this unchecked exceptions. So first point is this, second is this.
So does this runtime exceptions we can call this as a superclass?
Yeah, for now, this is our class, and runtime exception is acting as a parent class or superclass of for this
Right.
class.
Okay.
And if you check the hierarchy, so runtime exception, so runtime exception extending exception class. So if you check its hierarchy, let's go to previous class. We saw one big image, right? So there is a runtime exception. So it's child of exception, exception child of throwable, throwable is child of object. So if you check its hierarchy, let's create that as well. Okay. So we have object, throwable, then exception, then runtime exception, and then our class, payment exception. So you can see the hierarchy is quite big, and you can do this till you want. There's no like limit for this that you have to create 10 level hierarchy or 1 level hierarchy. Unless requirements are there, you can create as much hierarchy you want. Okay, so this is our child. So definitely all these methods defined in object, when method, features, interface, variables, all these get inherited to throwable, throwable get inherited to exception, exception get to runtime exception, and finally our own class is extending all these methods.
So you cannot pretty much. So you cannot create any custom exceptions without using our like the the hierarchy one.
No, you cannot do that.
Okay.
Okay, yes, it is mandatory to have, because that's why I have written these steps to know that if you are creating any custom exception, second step is mandatory. You have to extend the exception. Okay. Okay. So now we have a class. We are done with the steps. Let's use it. Okay, without using it, there's a point of creating it, creation of this class. Okay,
I have
so
a question.
yes,
That super is it's calling the superclass over there?
yes, right.
Okay.
Yeah, super is calling the parent of current class. Current class is payment field exception, and super is, I mean, the parent of the current class is runtime exception. So super calls the immediate parent class methods and functions. So right now it is calling immediate parent class constructor. Okay, this is what it is doing, and passing the message as argument. So if you notice in documentation, runtime exception, and there it is, string message constructs a new runtime exception with the specified detail message. Okay, so this is what it is doing. Calling below constructor. Okay guys, this is what it's doing. That's why I've even asked you to go over these keywords. This super static. It was homework. I don't know how many of you have still done. So do the homework, then definitely will know what is super keyword. Okay, so this is done. So our custom exception class is ready. Now what? Let's use it. So let's test it by creating a new class. Custom exception tester. Main method, and then let's put some requirement or something. Let's say we have multiple primitive types in database, sorry, in Java, and then we can create a type boolean is payment success, okay, and by default say false. So I have created a variable of boolean type which takes true and false. So that I have mentioned is payment success or failed. So I'm saying it's failed. Okay. I because we don't have any other framework or anything attached with it, so we need to hard code multiple stuffs. So this is done. Now I can use if condition, that if payment is success, then I can sys out some message. Payment is successful, transaction completed, whatever the message you want. Okay. Now else if it's not, so I will call that custom exception which we just created. How? By using throw keyword. So throw, then new, then payment failed exception, and you can see I have not written any big logic. I just need to show you two things. First, how to create custom exception, and how to call that custom exception by using throw keyword. That's it. To learn any concept, you don't have to create big examples. If you write this much, still your code will work. And what? Let's test it. So right click, run as application, and because it is false, it never goes here and prints. Now check out, same message we are getting, exception thread main. Now we are getting compact exception demo. This is our package name. Then payment failed exception, something similar we saw when we were doing that arithmetic exception failed, right? And where it's happening on line 11. There it is. So this is how we call custom exceptions. One thing you have noticed when we were doing this kind of operation, uh, here, yeah, let's run this code which was causing the issue, line 8. So you will see exception admin and something. Let's copy this to messages and see the difference. And even before that, custom, this is done. Tester, and we run this code. This is what we get. Okay, so this is working with the example. Okay, now we are checking out some messages which are printed on console. So let's compare with previous one. So this is what we're getting when we're getting a custom exception, and if we check out that this one arithmetic exception, so you will see okay, this one. So you can see everything is same except one difference. This is the difference. Everything's fine, that exception thread main and this printing the exception name, but here it is giving some more information. Divide by 0, right? So how it is coming? Because we haven't used that constructor which gives you some more detail about the exception, and something similar we saw on documentation as well. This is our runtime exception class, and here the constructor which takes string says constructs a new runtime exception with the specified detail message. So we need to use constructor of our custom message exception class to print some more details about exception, right? So what we have here, we have already used default constructor where insert tester there. So we're using default one. Now if we need to give some more information or message about exception, we can go for runtime exception class. So for more details about exception, we can use mm, constructor with string as an argument. Okay, so that is clear that what you have to do if you want some more information about exception, and that is always required. You cannot just print message and you are done with that. Nobody will get it why you have exception. You need to give the information as well, that why you have this exception. So you can mention or use constructor which takes string as an argument. Okay, so this is our custom exception class, sorry, random exception class, and this is its message. Okay, so we already have called super from there. So whatever message we will pass, it goes to super class, and accordingly JVM will handle it. So we just need to call argumented one. So this time I'll comment this out and I'll write throw new payment fail exception which takes string as a message, and here I'll give that information why this failed. So here we can say um, let's say the credit card info is wrong or missing, this whatever. Fine, so this time I'm giving some more information what exactly happened, why your payment is failed, and even before that I can print payment is failed. Reason is this. Okay, so we have some more detailed information about the exception, why we are getting this screen. Okay, so let's set this code this time. Right click, run as application, and now you guys can see we have everything and plus some more detailed about exception. It says payment failed. So payment is failed. Why? Because credit card information is wrong or missing details. That's how we can get some more information about exception. And we are done with basics of exception handling in core Java. If you guys do this much, whatever we did yesterday plus homework and plus today's class, that means you can actually answer questions from exception handling topic. So any question on this, please ask me so we can resolve that today. If we got this message, if we got this message, this was missing, so we have added this here. Okay, so no question, that means you guys are getting it. Okay, so we are done with the basics of exception handling, and now we know what is exception, how to handle it. These are the keywords we saw. So let's revise what we did from yesterday's class. So exception handling is one of the topic which is quite popular and mostly used topic in core Java. Then exception, what is exception? It's just an abnormal condition which abnormally terminates your code. So we need to handle the scenarios. Otherwise, if line 1 has exception, so the rest of the lines will never get executed. So we need to handle it the proper way, and the only way to handle this exception is try catch. Then you can go for other keywords like finally. Finally is for which actually or always executes irrespective of whether you have an exception or not. So this was try catch, and this is the hierarchy of your exception classes. Finally says it will always execute, doesn't matter whether you have exception or not. So we have seen both scenarios, with exception and without exception. So this is exception, and still the code get executed. And of course you can use try finally, but that doesn't make any sense. Why? Because finally is not supposed to handle exception. It just execute itself. That's it. So if you're writing try and finally, so exception will definitely come and rest of the code will not execute. The proper and the best way is use try catch finally. All three code at the same time and it will work. Then we saw throws keyword. So throws is used with method signature to throw some exception which are tentative, which might come, and compiler will force you to throw the exception. So that means when we are using throws keyword, so mostly we are using checked exception which are checked by compiler at compile time. When you are throwing the exception, then it will come. And then we saw one example. If you don't write that code which throws exceptions, you can see that. So let's see one more example for throws keyword. Then we'll wrap up the exception handling topic. So throws tester. This is what we did. What was here? Try catch value. Okay. So let's create new one class. Throw tester. Two. Okay. Let's create a method which says create DB connection. Okay, I'm going to create a database connection, but definitely not complete code, just one line. I'm going to do that. Let's make it public void static. Okay, we will call that directly create DB connection. My bad. Static should come before void and done. Now that first line, when we are going to create any connection, it's about loading a driver. Okay. Tomorrow we'll see that. Tomorrow we are going to start JDBC API to connect to database. So this will help you. So the first steps, when you are going to connect or create database connection, you have to load database driver. So how we do that? We write class dot for name method. Okay, and here we need to give the driver name. So it is com mysql dot jdbc dot driver. Don't worry, we will see this. What is this? And done. As soon as you do this, compiler is forcing you or giving you error. What it says? Unhandled exception type class not found. So when you do this or when you write this line, compiler is checking this and saying that you might end up with class not found exception. That means you're trying to load a class which might be missing or not a valid path. So you need to handle it. So Eclipse is giving you two options: either use throws keyword or surround with try catch. So try catch, we know it perfectly handles any exception. So we'll skip it. We'll use throws keyword this time. So I'll say add throws declaration because that's the second way which kind of handles the exception. So your exception will be gone. So if I use throws keyword, yep, it's gone, right? So this is one of the checked exception. Compiler is checking it. Unchecked, you don't have to handle the exception. If you guys have noticed, when we were doing payment exception handling, custom exception tester, so we have written this throw new keyword. So compiler is not forcing you to handle the exception. We are doing it. This is unchecked exception. Checked where compiler asks you to handle the exception. So there it is asked and we are done. So check out again if you haven't checked and unchecked exceptions and come back tomorrow if you have some doubts. So compiler forces you to check the exception. This is here and method is done. Again, I'm not going to complete this code. That will take some time. So tomorrow we'll complete it. And now let's create main method. And I'll call this method create database connection. And as soon as I do this, we are getting an exception. Again, if you hover, it says the same message, unhandled exception type, class not found. So again, compiler is checking that the main method is calling this method. So now it's main method's responsibility to handle this kind of scenario because this method says, okay, you can use me, but there's a condition. I have a throws keyword in my method signature. That means you need to handle this. I'm not going to handle. You have to handle. Whoever calls this method, they need to handle this class not found exception. So now it becomes main method's responsibility to handle this checked exception. So again, we have two options. Either we can go for try catch and that red line is gone, or you can do what? You can again use throws declaration and done. So it looks like everything is sorted, right? No issue, nothing is wrong, and we are doing right here. Okay, so let's put sys out before db connection, and this is after db connection. Okay, so let's see whether we get both messages or not. Right click, run as application, and we are just getting one message before db connection. Then it calls this method create db connection, and it says class not found exception. This class is not there, so something is wrong. And because we have an exception, that means rest of the code, either one line or thousand line, doesn't matter, they will not get executed. So here it proves the throws keyword is just for throwing the exception to let the caller knows that there might be a chance that you might end up with exceptions. So handle it properly. Right now, main method is also saying I don't want to handle it. I will just skip it or duck the exception. I won't handle it. So in that case, this goes to JVM and JVM will not handle it. Just interrupts the whole flow and ends up with exception. So this line will never execute. So again, the proper way is wrap this code within try catch. And of
So,
course, you can use both. Yeah,
so throws is always in a method.
throws, yes, in it goes in a method signature, not inside method signature.
Okay.
Throw goes inside method, throws method signature. Both are different.
Methods.
Yeah, and yeah, I was saying that you can use both thing, but again, it's kind of a wasting of resources. Either you can use try catch or you can use throws keyword. So I'll remove this part, and this time if I run the code, we are getting message. Of course, we are not
So
printing it. We get print. Yes.
which one is considered more cleaner, the throws or try and catch?
both has their own working. This is required when we want to alarm the caller that the method you're using, it might throw exception. So handle it, elegantly. So this is more
Okay.
elegant way. So throws is working here perfectly. It is perfect here. And here in min method, which is actually calling it, this is the perfect way. So our flow won't get interrupted, right? Think about you're trying to read a file and you might give the wrong file name. So your other process or other flow should not get interrupted. That particular method should get interrupted. So here what I'm doing, I'm trying to create a database connection which is causing issue, but I'm very sure this line and this line is not causing an issue. They are good in their own way. So this method says, okay, if you try to create any database connection, so you might end up with class found exception. So handle it properly. That's done. But other code is fine. That they should execute. So we are leaving it outside the method, and that will work. So if I run this code, this time we will get the message plus database connection also. The message also gets printed. So our first line executed. When we try to connect database connection, it failed. So not an issue. At least our rest of the code, which is not dependent on this, they should execute. So after database connection. So throws is perfectly used here, which says that okay, go for it, try to database connection, but if you do something wrong, you might end up with exception. And when this method gets called, so it's the caller's responsibility to handle the exception. If caller also says I don't want to handle, I will just use throws keyword, so nothing will work. This is not going to work, and plus the caller will end up with some exception and rest of the code will never execute. I hope it makes sense, the difference
So
between track and yeah.
So let's say on this example, we are trying to connect the JDBC, right? So
Hmm.
database. So on there, okay, let's we have throws class not found exceptions. But on the second method, like we are trying to do try and catch. So for example, we have the email address as a username and password as a anything.
Hmm.
So like what if there is something wrong here, like on this one, like the maybe somebody entered the wrong email, somebody entered the wrong password, so it's still like the throws class not found exceptions, like even if it's not connected, like still it's gonna work.
So when we say database, are you trying to connect email password with this connection or it's different?
Yeah, so just because it's a database connections, because the next method we are writing is like trying to get data from the database.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So you're saying maybe after lines on line 17, you might be trying to get some data, right?
Yes.
Hmm. So then we can have, because see, this is not a proper code which says proper logic, right? It's just a example to show you how to use throws and try and catch combinedly. And when you add some more logic, like a requirement, so you need to add more logic here. So you put a requirement that once we have a connection, so what I'll do, I'll say boolean. Okay, think what I'm going to do. Now we are returning a connection whether this is handled or not. So I'll say um, I'll create a boolean here. Boolean is db connected. When you put requirement, you need to add some more logic. So if it is fail, so that's fine. Otherwise, return this is db connected or not. Fine. So if everything was fine, for name does not returns any boolean value. So whatever happens, it will do the stuffs. So let's say initially by default we'll keep it false, and then we're returning that condition is db connected. We're just running the same, and here I can hold that connection. Boolean, let's have a div connection, fetch data from db, or let's say fetching data. I can use the same variable here. Okay, then I can initialize this variable here as well. Is to connected because of this. And now I can put a condition. If is DB connected, okay, then do the operation. Fine. So if you get a true, only then you will fetch the value. Otherwise, say
Else, not
else
connected.
block. Yeah, not connected. DB connection failed. So you will never end up in that issue you're asking, right?
Yes.
So it never goes in the block which says you are fetching data. It never returns true. So we're in this code, the connection failed. Fine. So you put more requirement, and so you need to add more logic, and then it goes like that way. So here we saw how to use throws and try catch in same code. So throws is just to tell the user that this code, this particular method might throw an exception. So it's the caller's responsibility to handle that scenario, to handle that particular exception.
And one more question.
Yeah,
It's
go on.
just maybe silly questions, but
Yeah.
like we have a throws. We use throws as a the method signature, right? So can we use like a throw inside that method?
Uh, throws here and throw inside the method.
Yes.
Yeah, you can use them. You can use them
Okay.
both. Yep, it's possible.
Okay.
So again, you have to put a requirement that okay, this might be thrown here. Maybe you can create your own exception. Let's say throw a new database connection field exception, like we did
Yes.
payment field exception. So you can create your own custom exception, DB connection field exception. Then throw it from here. Okay,
Okay.
but
Thank you.
that yeah, but again that would be not required because we already have connections or classes which do that. This is for something which is not there. So Java or JVM knows when connection is failing, so it will throw you exception. So there are lots of exception we'll see in our upcoming classes. Okay, and yeah, please do that checked and unchecked exception that is required to understand further classes because we are going to learn JDBC exception, JDBC API later, collection framework, and further we will do some more exception in server JSPs. So try to understand checked and unchecked exception, and either you can ask me or Shivam, but sort out these issues. Okay, guys, so we are done with the exception topic, which is really critical because this is the base where we handle scenarios, multiple unwanted or abnormal conditions. And this topic will helpful till you are end up with some projects or Spring Boot. So whatever you did, it's helpful to learn or start with your projects, interview setting as well. Okay, guys, so that's from my end. So if no questions, so we can meet tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, bye bye. Then have a good night.
Thank you.